If you study IT security, would you be able to manage these risks? Stay till the end to get some notes. And we're going to take a quiz to see if you truly know what you know. So, what I learned is that risk is threat times vulnerability. And vulnerability is the gap in your software. Vulnerability, an example, could be unsecured software. And think of it as like an open window that someone could climb through. And I'm just reading this off my iPad because I'm still trying to study IT. You know what I'm saying? So this kind of helps me, you know, understand and connect with other people in IT. You feel me? So threat is the danger, right? What can exploit the weakness, right? An example of a threat may be a virus or unverified people in a company trying to send malicious files, and you want to think of this like a burglar trying to climb through an open window. So the last thing is risk, which is the potential impact it could have on a company, and this is basically the likelihood of damage damage happening if a threat exploits the vulnerability. And an example of this would be the risk may be the likelihood of private data being leaked in a company. Now, we don't want this, right? So, just to keep it short and simple, if you guys skipped around, vulnerability, for example, could be unsecured software, and the threat could be a virus, which can exploit it, which creates a high risk, which is the data being leaked. Now, here's some notes if you want to jot these down right now. So, for risk identification, before you protect anything, you need to know what you're protecting. And this involves identifying your assets, so the data, the hardware, and the software, and being able to recognize what could potentially harm these assets. Now, the second part is the risk assessment. So this is where you measure how serious a problem could be, and you have to look at two things, which is one, the likelihood. How probable is it that this threat could actually happen? And the second one is its impact. If it were to happen, how bad will this damage be? Now the third one. There's a third now we move on to the third one. The third one is the risk treatment, which I'm going to tell you guys 4 ways to handle these risks. So the first one is mitigate, which is reduce. Taking steps, you want to take steps to make the risk less likely or less damaging. So an example of this would be installing the antiviruses on all the computers, or have employees go through a training to not click on suspicious links or malware. Now the second way is transfer, right? We want to share. So you want to, instead of having this responsibility put on you, you want to shift this burden onto someone else that can actually know how to handle this, which is purchasing possibly cybersecurity insurance. Now, the third way is avoidance. You want to do this to stop all the risk and activity together. So an example of this is just to not use, certain softwares at all, just to prevent the risk of data being leaked. And the fourth thing is that you have to accept the fact that, stuff like this does happen, but it's not more of not taking action, but instead of, the cost of fixing it, instead of, think about it like this. Accept the fact that that there's going to be certain minor risks, and certain problems that may occur. For example, like a server going down an hour, like once a year. So that's acknowledging the situation and accepting the fact that it's going to occur, and just being fine to deal with that. Is that a good thing? No. But at the same time, you feel some type of reassurance that it can't be too bad. And if you guys have stuck to the end, let's take this little quiz. Okay, so what I have here is 10 simple questions, and if you go through this, you should be good. So, which of the following best describes a vulnerability in this context of cybersecurity? A likelihood of this, no. A weakness, yes, because it's vulnerable. Yep. If your company decides to purchase cybersecurity insurance to cover the potential financial losses of a data breach, which risk treatment strategy are they employing? Transferring, because you're shifting all the financial burden to a third party. In the process of authentication, requiring a user to scan their fingerprint is an example of what factor? Something you are? Yes. So biometrics such as fingerprints or facial recognition are physical characteristics unique to the individual. What is the primary purpose of encryption in protecting data confidentiality? What is the primary purpose of encryption in protecting data confidentiality? What is the primary purpose? To convert readable. Okay, yeah. So I'm correct, right? So encryption acts as a scramble mechanism, ensuring that data is useless to unauthorized individuals who intercept it. A company realizes that running a specific legacy application poses a massive security threat. They decide to decommission the application entirely to use a different process. So this is avoiding. Yep, because by stopping the risky activity using the application completely, they're avoiding the risk of it. Which of the following describes the principle of least privilege? What? Okay, I know this one. Which of the following describes the principle of least privilege? I'm gonna say it's D, because conferring access control mechanisms so users only have the permission strictly necessary to do their jobs. Yep. So this principle minimizes the potential damage if an account is compromised by limiting what the account can access. If you install antivirus software and train your employees not to click on suspicious email links, which risk treatment strategy are you applying? Mitigate. Yep. Taking steps to make a risk less likely or less damaging is also known as mitigation. Using a hardware token to generate a temporary code for logging in is an example of which authentication factor? Damn it! Something you have. Okay. So I got this one wrong because what it means is that this refers to behaviors like typing speed. But something you have, yeah, because something you have is a hardware token. Yeah, that makes sense. In the equation risk equals threat times vulnerability, how do a threat and vulnerability interact? A threat exploits a vulnerability, which creates the risk. Yep. A danger, which is aka a threat, takes advantage of a weakness, the vulnerability, leading to potential damage, which is the risk. Which of the following scenarios best represents accepting a risk? This one. So the answer to this one is deciding that a minor non-critical server going offline for an hour once a year is fine because fixing it costs too much. When the cost of fixing a vulnerability outweighs the potential damage, acknowledging it without taking action is accepting the risk. I hope you guys learned something, and I hope I learned something, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.